we're going to get started. You look all ready and smiles.
So I have hard copies coming. We'll bring those in as soon as they get off the printer. We have a lot of slides to cover, so I don't know how you want to handle it. Do you want to stop at certain points and have a discussion, or do you want to get through the slides and then we'll go back?
Our style is we're probably going to stop you.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I could tell you we're going to wait till the end, but that's probably not going to happen.
Our style is
Realistically.
Chair is honest with you, right?
Realistically.
Real world education doesn't wait till the end.
Yeah, we can't stop. We have to stop.
And if at any point you feel like I'm going too fast, just let me know and we'll slow down and go back. Okay. So here are the items that we're going to be discussing today. These are all the schools and the other areas that we'll be discussing: calendar application areas, grandfathering rules, as well as some of the schools. So for Parkside Elementary, the district goals when we were opening Parkside Elementary was to provide relief to overcrowded or capped schools in the area, as well as to try to provide a proximate elementary school. Now, proximate defined by Wake County Schools is a nearby school, not necessarily the closest school. Yes, ma'am. So when we look at the draft 2 map of Parkside Elementary, you can see we had the new base attendance area here is in yellow. So we're trying to provide approximate school for these students here coming out of Alston Ridge, these students here coming out of Cedar Fork, and these students here coming out of Carpenter. This area here was Carpenter Elementary, which is down here. Okay. By sending these students here to a more proximate school, Alston Ridge, and to Parkside, that took a large number of students out of Carpenter. And so in order to provide relief to Carpenter with filling those seats back up with proximate students, we chose students from this particular area. Now, I want you to think back 2 years ago when we opened Hortons Creek, which is right here. These moves correspond with the moves that we had talked about 2 years ago when we were planning for Hortons Creek coming on. At that time, Cameron Pond right here, which is assigned to Mills Park today, was proposed at that time that they would be assigned to Carpenter Elementary, because when we drew the line here in Cary Park, we were considering what was going to happen 2 years from now when we opened Parkside Elementary. Parkside Elementary is providing relief to Cedar Fork, which is necessary. Unfortunately, we'll talk about the calendar of Parkside, but it must provide relief to Cedar Fork because Cedar Fork cannot continue to operate at its current crowding. We had some proximity here. These students here are assigned to Carpenter today and are being proposed to assign to Morrisville, which is directly across the street. So Parkside as a traditional calendar school versus a year-round calendar school. When you look at the base attendance area and you look at the number of students in the area, the growth in the area, the capacity would be for traditional 636, and based on the proposed application area, the crowding percentage would be 148%. As a year-round school, we'll pick up an additional 200 seats, and the crowding percentage is expected to be 93%. When we assign students to a new school, we're assigning base students as well as the calendar application students. So if you were at Alston Ridge, okay, and you, as a calendar application student, and you are now assigned to Parkside, if it is year-round, you would go to year-round. But if you were on the traditional calendar school as an application student, you would not be reassigned. So that's where you see discrepancy in the numbers between, if you do 148% of 636, that's a higher number than 93% of 834. So there's a different number of students being assigned to the school.
So you're pulling from the Alston Ridge base, but my student is at green level as traditional calendar. That student would stay at Green Hope rather than going to
So if they're assigned to Parkside as a new, they would be assigned to the calendar application school for Parkside.
Okay.
So if they are at Alston Ridge, so let's talk about the students here, okay, in this Providence Place area. If they are attending Green Hope Elementary today, They would be assigned to whatever we determine to be the calendar application school, traditional calendar application school for Parkside, assuming we would open as year-round.
Without having to apply
Correct.
out
That is correct.
of their base. Okay.
And there are seats to do that?
There would be, yes.
Okay.
So here is a map. These are all the elementary base attendance areas. So this is Hortons Creek. This is Mills Park. Okay. You've got Alston Ridge up here, Parkside in here, and this map shows where the population is growing within the next 5 years. The darker the color, the more residential growth that'll be happening. So you can see here, this is the White Oak area down here. Okay, and then this area here, this is right around Panther Creek High School. So looking at different options for elementary versus year-round for Parkside. Option 1, we could reassign additional students from many schools in order to reduce the projected crowding at Parkside. And I'm going to go through these and then I'll show you them on a map next. Option 2, we could divide the proposed base attendance area for Parkside into 2 sections. One section attends Parkside and the other section would be assigned as a satellite area further east or north where we have available seats. Option 3, we could open Parkside at 148%, but it's just not feasible. With K-3 class size legislation, we will not be able to fit all of the students in the school when that legislation takes hold. So option 1, if we are looking at assigning Parkside as a traditional calendar school, we would then need to reduce this area, so the yellow would be smaller. You're looking at Cedar Fork now, students having to be reassigned to Morrisville or Northwoods. Then students from Northwoods and Morrisville needing to be assigned to Kingswood, Briarcliff, and then additional students from Briarcliff and Kingswood going to Reedy Creek, to Adams, and it keeps dominoing as you go further east. And now you're talking about more schools impacted and a much larger number of students being impacted for the sake of just opening this school on traditional calendar. So option 2, we could use, let's say, this particular line right here. We're right next to the school, that red line. Here is the Breckenridge area. They could stay assigned to Parkside as traditional, and then we would take these 2 sections here and assign them as a satellite area someplace else. Pleasant Grove, somewhere in North Raleigh, or someplace, further east or south.
What is the name of that neighborhood?
There's Providence Place there, right here, Hamlet in the Park, I believe. And
They would go to a farther school.
It wouldn't just be a part, it would be scattered students from that section.
Okay, but not everybody would go in there.
Right.
Okay, good.
He did have one section that would go, so it wouldn't have to be just completely. It'd be random if it was capped.
You divide.
Right, random if it's capped.
Okay, thanks.
Glenn, if perchance, the legislature, realizes the error of its ways and lifts the K-12 mandate when they come back in November, which is after we have to make this decision. But if we did not have the K-3 class size mandate, would we be having this same level discussion?
It's a good question. I mean, we've got lots of growth in the area. We would have to see what are the limitations on class sizes. Is it 20? Does it go back to, we can have 26 in a class? There's a lot of different variables that we couldn't answer today.
But if we were back to where we were, I mean, the point that I'm trying to get at is a lot of people have been raising the issue that based on the assumptions of the 2013 bond, we were planning to open schools on the traditional calendar. Had those assumptions still been able to be in play, then we would probably be having that conversation. The K-3 class size mandate threw our assumptions out the window, and if we could go back to the legislative conditions of 2013, then we would be having a different conversation, would we not?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, conservatively, we'd still be looking at a year-round calendar because of the growth and the number of schools that we would still need in the area to keep up with the growth. We have very dense growth in this part of the county.
So growth is higher than we predicted in this part of the county.
It continues, yes. Each year it continues to
It's
get
outpacing the availability of capital funds.
Right.
of this cash flow.
But considering reality as it is today, which I like to do, we cannot leave everybody in that school unless it's year-round, period.
That yellow area, if they're all going to stay in that yellow area, yes, we would need it to be year-round.
We would have to reassign half of them somewhere else. Okay, good to know.
Well, about a quarter, probably.
Well, whatever.
But yeah.
Well, it's a very compact yellow area. You know, I mean, it's pretty they're proximate to the school. But my concern, a lot of parents have expressed a concern about how numbers are going down at some of the schools that we've been discussing in this plan. And so that gives them the sense that there's capacity. But that is due to the K-3 class size. We've been adjusting to K-3 class size. And it's a legislative non-negotiable. I think the public needs to understand that right now, as it stands,
Reality is now.
this reality is now, is that it's a non-negotiable, a fixed cap going forward. And that's our reality that we have to deal with. Because as Dr. Martin said, I mean, I've been a proponent of the traditional or modified calendar, a single calendar for schools, and I wish we could do that more, but this is our reality is that the K-3 class size is non-negotiable from what the legislators have told us, and we have lobbied them as a board. We have talked with legislators, and we've not seen any changes. So.
Glenn, one of the questions that came to me several times was the change in the enrollment and capacity numbers between Draft 1 and Draft 2. Why was there that change? Why did we see that change?
So that change had to do with recognizing special ed students who were assigned to the school. So there are certain portions of seats that are assigned for regional special ed students where general ed students can't occupy those seats because they're set for those particular programs. And so instead of presenting capacities like we have in the past, including those seats, we're trying to get a more accurate number of what the capacity is, so we're showing without those seats. So that's why you'll see some of those changes in the Draft 2.
So it's dealing with the regional programming
That's
within
correct.
the
We're
school.
removing those regional program seats.
Okay.
Which, if we're removing those seats, we're removing the service provided to those children, and so that
No, we're just not counting them in the capacity when we're talking about assigning students to the school. Okay.
And for those students, do they also occupy a general education seat?
No, they have
Depending
they have their seats in that particular class.
Okay. Regional program.
Yeah,
So
it's a
if
regional
it's like an EBS class, does a first grader also, right, they would be a first grade seat and then a seat in the EBS classroom. Do I have that right?
Depends on the report that you run.
Okay.
So the next couple slides will be assuming that you're still planning to go with the staff proposal of the year-round calendar for Parkside. And so now we're going to talk about the calendar application school for Parkside. So Powell Elementary is an option that the staff had proposed. This provides magnet curriculum not offered at a base school. It would offer the Liggett Middle and Low High School pathway, and it would be a longer bus ride. Pleasant Grove Elementary is more proximate than Powell, and currently under the staff proposal it doesn't offer district transportation.
is there a reason we couldn't consider the district transportation issue?
Here, we're rolling right into the next slide. So Pleasant Grove, you could offer Pleasant Grove Elementary with district transportation, and assumptions made due to mileage, it would be a shorter bus ride than Powell. And so here we come to the option. So you could offer Powell only with bus transportation. You could offer Powell with a bus and Pleasant Grove without, which is what we proposed in Draft 2. You could offer Pleasant Grove Elementary with a bus only. Or we could, from some of the feedback we had gotten from parents, is they wanted a more proximate school than Powell or Pleasant Grove. We could assign a Mills Park or a Highcroft as an application school. However, we will not be able to seat any students for several years until the crowding is reduced at those schools. So it's not really an option for families to take advantage of it this time.
So am I not reading Powell and Pleasant Grove as both with transportation?
We did not offer that, staff, but we can certainly entertain anything that the board would like to do. I don't know if that will be
It's not option 3.
efficient for bus transportation because you're offering
She wants an option 5,
Right.
where you're offering
That's what you're
Powell
saying.
and
Like I am.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I mean, my point is, first of all, we need to know as a board that we need to support the magnet program. So Powell Elementary is our best choice as a Board of Education. If we offer both, that's just in the parents' the parents' choice, I guess. We give them a choice. But I definitely don't want to take Powell Elementary with bus transportation off the table.
Well, Powell would be an express bus from the Y, correct?
We could set it up however you want. I mean, we had talked about an express bus from the Y only to accommodate the early times that the bus would be coming to pick families up and then dropping them off.
To allow for before
try
and
to
after
work with them,
care.
yeah. I mean,
But-
You're talking about neighborhood and
Which I would like to offer neighborhood for Powell Elementary since that's what our goal is. But I don't know where that fits.
I see
But it could be an and, right? I mean, it could be neighborhood. I mean, the Y link was really important because the Y can perform before and after school care, which one of the biggest problems with express transportation is if you can't get to the express stop, particularly in the afternoon, it becomes impossible. But if you've got the Y, if you've got the Y there as a place where the child can go after school, then express becomes much more viable. But I think it needs to be a neighborhood and the Y.
So I like option 2 best. So I just want to clarify, option 5 is not my favorite thing. But I'm just throwing it in there.
I like that. Mr. Fletcher, the discussion.
Well, the challenge with proximate traditional calendar seats is partially created by another move in the plan, which is to move Highcroft students into Green Hope. The Green Hope has been the relief valve for folks who wanted out of traditional. So what are the possibilities of delaying that move? I don't think it's the key ginger peg in the plan. But what happens at Highcroft if we don't make that move? Because the school's almost 200% capacity at the moment.
So offering Green Hope as an additional option is probably not in the best interest because you've already got Alston Ridge and Carpenter already applying to Green Hope, and we've already got limited seats. We weren't able to accommodate a great deal of the requests that came out of both of those schools during the transfer window, as many of you may remember. So we can certainly look at it, but you would then be having 3 schools that are year-round in an area where traditional calendar is in high demand, and you'd have less and less people who were getting seated.
Well, I think I'm leaning. Oh, sorry. It's okay. No, it's not.
We're waiting on this picture.
And I just want to say something too. So the K-3 class size legislation committee from staff, we're going to be reviewing a lot of the schools. We've already started a lot of the schools, especially in the Western Wake area, and even maybe a Green Hope or something like that. When you're looking at schools now that may have seats, we need to look at what that long-term health is going to be, and so we may have recommendations in the next couple months about what are some next steps to try to accommodate K-3, because we have some serious crowding concerns in Western Wake, and that was before K-3 class size legislation, which has been magnified now.
We have folks who have Hortons Creek as an option, which isn't an option.
Correct.
Right.
And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is there an option available now, out of the blue, out of the crazy? Is it possible for us to think about advancing a school into either adaptive reuse or using the unused space at Green Level High School to open another elementary school that might provide some relief. And we don't have one in process being designed and built at the moment, which is a 3-year process. So we're at least 6 months short on doing that. The data would seem to suggest that we can keep all of the schools full and still provide more options to go to a traditional calendar if we had seats. And I'm not saying anything against the Parkside option of year-round, but it is an additional capacity that's needed. And it was really funny. I was looking back through the notes from our session at Cary last Monday night, and one of the profound things about 8 speakers in was build more schools. Yep. That's why we're where we are, is that we're building every school that's funded. And that's in cooperation with the county. I'm not throwing any casting aspersions.
We're doing the best we can.
And they are financing as fast as they can.
Right.
They are.
So,
As the county.
just looking for out-of-the-box solution.
And I wanted to raise my concern about this option is that, as Ms. Mahaffey pointed out, so if you're currently at a year-round traditional school and then you are reassigned into the Parkside base, option 1 would reassign a student far away. That wasn't their intention when they were looking at the traditional calendar. So I like option 5 of the express bus to Powell. I can understand if we can't do neighborhood, but I would like for us to consider that. But the express bus to Powell and the
Pleasant Grove.
and then Pleasant Grove having neighborhood transportation, because that's
What if it
equitable.
was the other way around?
Because that's equitable for parents to.
Express and neighborhood to Powell.
What if it was the other way around? Express to Pleasant Grove and neighborhood to Powell?
Well, I think we should be incentivizing with transportation what we need. So if we need parents to go to year-round schools, they should get neighborhood transportation. If they're opting out of a base of year-round to go to traditional, perhaps they should be getting express or more abbreviated transportation, more clustered bus stops. We need to be incentivizing where we need the utilization, which is at our year-round schools. And at our magnet schools.
Right.
So that transportation should be incentivizing magnet and year-round choices.
Well, that would be express to Pleasant Grove, and that would be express to Pleasant Grove and neighborhood to Powell.
But not just for the Parkside folks. We're going to do express to.
I was just about to say,
we need to be equitable in that.
In my exactly looking at this.
Agreed.
I can only have
But
I know.
the neighborhood transportation to Powell would require additional buses for ride times and load times to keep that ride time down, which is why the express busing with the Y.
It's a more packaged deal to me, and it's
If it works.
and it's,
Powell needs the and. It can't be
If it
only
works.
express or only neighborhood.
We heard from a lot of families that Pleasant Grove is not an option because of the drive time. So they're asking for some sort of transportation to get them to Pleasant Grove.
I would agree. I'm with you on that.
So Cameron Pond is another neighborhood that we had heard from with regards to Parkside. Remember, they are assigned to Mills Park Elementary and Middle School today. They're both schools are on the traditional calendar. There is a proposed greenway that will connect the neighborhood to the park, which also connects to the school campus. We have heard from them talking about how they can access this by biking and walking to the school. Both schools have enrollment caps, Mills Park Elementary since 2012, Mills Park Middle School since 2014. I think Mills Park Elementary today has over 70 students capped out right now.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Mills Park Elementary has, I think it's about 70 students that are capped out, and Mills Park Middle School has, I think it's 190
190
that are
for the
capped
middle
out.
school.
Yep. Mills Park Middle School will be provided some relief with the opening of Alston Ridge Middle School. No additional relief to Mills Park Elementary is in the current proposal other than proposing to move Cameron Pond to Carpenter. And the base attending base percentage, I think this is important to understand because when we do our data tables, we cannot predict what parent choice will be. So what we can do is use the information that we have. So when it comes to Mills Park Elementary and Middle School, it's more likely that if that is their base school, they're going to attend that school and not attend another school because 90% of the base attends the base for both elementary and middle school for Mills Park.
That's a big number.
So for Cameron Pond, they're proposed to be assigned to Carpenter and Alston Ridge Middle School in the Draft 2 proposal. Both of those schools are on the year-round calendar. They're not as proximate to the Mills Park campus. They are separated, Cameron Pond, from Mills Park campus by NC 540. Carpenter Elementary currently has an enrollment cap. In the current proposal, there's a reduction at Carpenter Elementary in crowding. Now, again, we heard that from parents when they say, hey, it looks like the crowding percentages are going up at Carpenter. Thank you. But what we're not understanding is, again, with the base attending base percentages and some of the other moves that we were looking at with regards to allowing maybe Cameron Pond North to stay at Alston Ridge and the move where we had taken Twin Lakes and then that southern portion of Twin Lakes there, when we removed them from Carpenter, the crowding came down for Carpenter. So when you look at Draft 3, you'll see that there'll be a reduction from Carpenter today with regards to what Carpenter will be proposed during Draft 3. And again, when you look at year-round capacity, Carpenter Elementary at, let's say, 116% crowded is a lot more manageable than Mills Park Elementary at 111% because of, one, the base attending the base percentages, and we know that for Carpenter, about 60% of the students will attend the base.
Say that again.
Say again?
Say that again.
Mills Park Elementary.
So one is more manageable at 100.
Yes, because a multi-track year-round school has more room to grow. So when you have the school set for double-loaded on 2 tracks and single-loaded on 2 tracks, that school can expand to double-loaded on all tracks if necessary.
So the way I would say that is that a larger percentage split across 4 tracks is more efficient than a smaller percentage that's only on traditional.
A lot, actually.
They're basically
Makes a
divided by
giant
4,
difference.
right? In Mills Park, everybody has to be there when everybody's there. That means you're 116, you're 113, everybody's there. You're 116 at Carpenter, well, you get 4% extra in each track, so it's more like 104, even though it's 116.
That's correct.
There needs to be a disclaimer on that, on those charts.
That's a good
Because I don't think it's obvious
I don't
when you're
think
looking.
people understand that.
When you
You look at the 116 versus 11, so 116 is bigger, but it's 116 divided by 4.
Right.
As opposed to 111 divided by 1.
But I think, the other wild card in that is it's hard to predict parent choice. What parents perceive to be the school that they all want to go to ourselves.
So then, what about the other thing that I'm hearing, aside from the Greenway and the connectivity that the Greenway offers to Mills Park Elementary, is the construction that's happening on Carpenter Fire Station, 55, the railroad track.
What is that going on?
So what do we have in place? I'm getting photos sent to me of different accidents that are happening in that area. So what do we have transportation wise, and what does that look like for it's going to be the next 5 years that area is under construction?
So I would assume that buses are being routed through safe avenues to get there. They're here.
I'm sure we're traveling those roads today. We have to maneuver through construction through the whole county. So I would say that it's really nothing new for us. We're doing it today.
It's not uncommon in other areas. I know, where we have construction where bridges are closed and we have to reroute buses.
So then, it's the question that comes is the question of what's the ride time going to be to Carpenter versus what they currently have, and I don't think we've gotten an answer to that. but I
By
don't
bus or by car?
Bus.
Okay.
I mean, they can drive it by car.
We can do some modeling.
Okay.
One of the things, just as a comment, that we're seeing throughout the county, as we look at existing routes year over year without making any changes to them, ride times are increasing just based on increased traffic and increased congestion.
And before we go on to class size, and we're still talking about Cameron Pond, so Green Level is the transfer, the calendar application school out of Carpenter, correct?
Green Hope. Yes.
Green Hope. I'm sorry. This is going to be happening. At least it's not Green
It's
Hope.
just not a Holly school.
Right. I've got those down. So Green Hope is the transfer school. What is with looking at, I know we're going to talk about the Highcroft move later, but looking at Green Hope as it is now, what is how many students can we realistically seat out of Alston Ridge and out of Carpenter into Green Hope? Since it's so full and we haven't really been able to seat kids. So that's the other question of, for these families that want to apply to a traditional calendar school, we're not offering Mills Park because it's kind of a non-option option. So with the option that we're giving them, is it really an option?
And certainly at kindergarten, and I know we'll probably have some seats at first grade.
Okay.
But
if I have a third or fourth grader?
It depends on, the attrition from year over year, what seats we have available with regards to the K-3 class size legislation. It just depends. I can't give an exact answer to that today. Like, I have 5 seats for sure, 10 seats for sure, but it just depends on, after we get through our projections, who's going to be there, looking at, how many calendar application students may have left. We can go ahead and try to replace those. And again,
Do we just have one option?
Carpenter just has Green Level as the
option. Or
Carpenter
traditional.
Green Hope
Do
as
we
an option.
do we add?
We have one option for traditional application.
Which is also the one option for Alston Ridge Elementary for traditional.
And it's limited.
Yep.
And we'll get to the
We'll only
calendar
get one.
application slide so we can confirm that again.
Did you have any other questions? No, thank you.
So I wanted to talk again about K-3 class size legislation because that is a main driver, especially in Western Wake where we're opening a new school. We'll need to fully comply with the mandate in 2021. We are beginning phasing in class size reductions beginning in 1920.
And you have to.
That's part of the law. We've already converted more than 80 offices, storage rooms, and conference spaces to create classroom space, and ultimately we're going to need more than 400 additional classrooms district-wide. That's just a reality that our district has to face with regards to this.
I'll just note several of us were at Fuller this morning. There are 2 classrooms basically put into the media center. They just cornered off the media center and said, hey, this is classroom area, this is classroom area. That's what's happening across our county.
I don't know how many % of magnets are at Fuller. I can't tell what.
No, but I'm just making the point of what we're doing to try to accommodate classrooms.
Yeah.
So this is a slide that we had from draft 2. Wanted to bring it up again. Again, this is an example of Mills Park Elementary. If we had to implement the K-3 class size legislation today, we would need 5 additional classes just to accommodate the students that are at the school today. So Mills Park Elementary, I have a map, and I don't know if you guys want to go through the maps now, but this is somewhat of a map I can talk about. When you look at Mills Park Elementary, this is the proposed area in this greenish blue. Okay, here's Cameron Pond over here. All right. This area, if you choose to leave Cameron Pond in Mills Park Elementary, we will need to look elsewhere to provide relief. And so when you look at this is a very dense area, lots of homes on top of each other, lots of connected neighborhoods where you saw when we tried to draw the line here through Cary Park, how connected those families felt, and they had that the lake and the greenway path in there. So this isn't an easy decision. So you'd be having the same conversation with people who feel connected to neighborhoods. And one of our parts of our pillar is to try not to split neighborhoods. So this would be very difficult if you're looking at it. You've got this section here that's separated by 540, or you're looking at somewhere in here to try to reduce the base in order to accommodate.
So it's one or the other?
That is correct. And I have detailed maps I can show you guys later when we have more time to pour over this.
So, given the growth that's happening in the Mills Park Elementary base, I'm seeing some blank spaces in the south.
That is correct.
Is there a possibility, because at some point, I'm assuming there's a dead end in those neighborhoods. I mean, I've driven down a couple of those roads. Somebody's going to build there. Do we preemptively take that space?
You're one step ahead.
And
we do.
Draft three, when we were going through this draft 3, we're going to look at taking this area that's undeveloped at this time with no students and assigning it to White Oak, so that if it does within the next 12 months fill up or starts to build, we're going to be ahead of that. So we will be taking that piece out of Mills Park already.
So not if, but when.
Yes.
One,
We should do it now. So
historically,
don't talk about it being a Mills Park.
the school system has no control over where residential growth happens. And in the mid-1990s, when we were growing by 6,000 students a year, the board at that time adopted a practice of circling undeveloped or emerging subdivisions, but we didn't send them to a close school. We sent them on purpose to a school farther away to slow down the influx of families into those neighborhoods. And it was an effective strategy to put some minor brake on the rapid residential growth, particularly of folks who had kids ready for school. Now, there's some different dynamics in our market today. We've got charter schools, we've got other things with which we're competing. But to take that group, that land from Mills Park and send it to White Oak doesn't seem to be making a bold enough move to protect us for more than a year. And so I would say Swift Creek, Dillard, some place that's farther away but still close, still reasonable distance, just to slow down the residential growth. The builders won't like that. They managed to do okay even though we had made those kinds of decisions in the 90s. Something to consider. Now, sending them to White Oak doesn't solve our problem. It just moves it.
So it was a strategy. I don't know that I knew it was to slow growth. It was a reality to me. It was like it was based on stability, because we fought over stability and proximity and all of that. But I am so for moving this area here that is not grown up yet. There are students in there, not many, small amount.
In this area right here,
Isn't there like a few?
they're not in this area.
None?
In Mills Park Elementary, no.
None.
Now, Mills Park Middle School, the south portion of Mills Park Middle School would
A
have
little
some
bit,
students there.
but we could work on that.
Yes.
So what is that area that's dense above?
Cary Park,
Right in here? Yeah, this is Cary Park South.
Sutherland, Greystone.
So our choice right now is really Cameron Pond versus that,
Correct.
if we're going to keep Mills Park as traditional.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Sutton.
And how many students are in that little piece you're talking about?
The Cameron Pond area?
Worst case scenario, 69, right?
So for elementary,
Well, elementary now.
about 110 or so, 115.
And middle?
Middle school, you're looking at about 70.
we kind of grabbed that little piece that we had in the first place for the other part?
Because we were using 540 as a boundary. It was more proximate to Carpenter, and due to the density in this particular
Why
area.
was put into Mills Park?
Mills Park was much larger. It used to encompass the Hortons Creek area, portion of Hortons Creek.
It's a traditional school with a year-round base until Hortons Creek came and White Oak came, correct? Because it was a year-round school for a year.
Mills Park originally.
Yeah.
Yes, Mills Park originally was planned to open as, it did open as year-round.
For 1 year.
Yes.
We could handle this area.
So why were they included there originally? Because at the time when we built the Mills Park base, when we established the base, it was expected to open year-round and did open year-round, so you could accommodate more students. 540 at the time wasn't there.
540, and half of those developments
A lot of the
weren't there.
developments weren't even there either.
Cameron Pond wasn't fully built out yet.
Well, it is now.
Not at the time.
Southwest, not the south, not the north.
Show Carpenter Ridge with
Yeah, I have detailed maps of where you can see where parcels are today for recognized parcels for Wake County schools.
And it's also important to remember, the area around Mills Park doesn't show construction, but that's park, wetland, fire station. So we're not going to get development right around the school.
No. No, right around
Even
the
though
school. You will
we see land there, but
Yes.
the reality is that's not developable.
That's the school campus. That's right.
Well, and park,
And the park.
fire station. And
Yes.
Right across the street and
Here we go. So option one, we can move forward with the current recommendation from staff, which would be to send Cameron Pond to Carpenter Elementary and Alston Ridge Middle School. Option two, you could allow for Cameron Pond to remain at Mills Park Elementary and Middle School and not make any additional moves and have to figure out what are we going to do to accommodate all of the students assigned to the school. Option three, you could allow for Cameron Pond to remain at Mills Park Elementary and Middle and reassign a different portion of the Mills Park Elementary Middle School base to relieve the crowding, which is what we just discussed. Or option four, we can look at revising the grandfathering rules to allow more students to remain. But again, that's a short-term solution, but doesn't help with the impending K-3 class size concerns that are starting to be phased in next year for 1920. Yes.
You're going to name me option 5. That's going to be my new name.
I know.
Okay.
I'm just going to call you 5.
So, just to be sure, you could actually allow for Cameron Pond to leave Cameron Pond leave Mills Park Elementary but remain at Mills Park Middle. Now, the only reason I say that is because you go left out of Cameron Pond and you cross Mills Park to get up to Alston Ridge, but that would not align their calendars, right?
That is correct.
Okay, just want to be sure I got that
And
right.
calendar alignment K-8 was a major goal for
Yes, it was.
staff in this area. So
if you
misaligning
allowed-
their calendar,
Okay,
you would cause other neighborhoods who have been reassigned to have that same argument.
okay, thanks.
So I don't know if we're going to talk about the middle or if we're talking about it all together here. To revise the grandfathering, I am much more sympathetic to revising the grandfathering for the middle school than necessarily for the elementary school, because take the middle schooler who is currently on traditional calendar would have to shift. Right, so if you're a sixth grader on traditional calendar, you'd have to switch for 2 years to be on year-round calendar, only to go back to traditional calendar to go to high school. That is a stability that I wouldn't want for my family. So I would be interested in revising the grandfathering, particularly the middle school level, actually for many of our discussions here, because middle school is such a short time.
And I have a slide for grandfathering that you'll see later.
Okay.
Yep.
So if we take option 2 and leave them there, what's the worst case scenario that happens?
What was the question?
What happens if we
If we leave to take option 2, what's the worst case scenario? What happens?
What comes year-round school in 2021 when we have to do K-3?
For 2020.
That's the answer.
It's already capped, so.
Glenn's like, that's the answer.
Huh? I mean, I was asking you.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't asking.
We would seriously have to consider, we wouldn't have to consider, we would need to open the school as year-round.
Yeah, we would.
Open, you mean
Convert.
Change it to Mills Park to year-round.
I mean, well, it's capped, so no more students.
That's right.
Right now.
Just recognizing, kindergartners and 6th graders who've been living in the base prior to the cap dates.
So at the beginning of the next school year, it would be the same as what it is now, right?
Speak up, please,
Yeah, we
Kate.
can't hear.
What would happen, whatever happens at the beginning of the next school year is what we're realizing now at the school, correct? Or would there be more? There wouldn't be more students because it's capped, right?
Shouldn't be, but there will be an impact on the stepping off reduction that has to be made to implement K-3 next year. So there will be an impact to the existing number of classrooms and students in the school because of K-3, even if we leave it capped and don't do anything else. And so it's that impact that would definitely be there for next year.
And there's still some growth in the base. If you go to Cary Park, there's townhomes that they added a few years back, and now there's a condo building in there as well.
But they wouldn't be able to get in because
But they wouldn't be able to get in because
Yes.
it's capped.
And
So
that's another thing. Growth is a bit deceptive because there may be no new growth in areas, but that doesn't mean that families aren't churning over their home to another family that has students who are in, elementary or middle school now. So where we may not see residential growth, you're still seeing, the data is showing that we're not seeing a relief in the number of kids per grade level for quite some time.
And folks are looking at schools when they look to buy their homes, so we have to recognize that. So the clearer and more transparent we can
need to be clear and transparent.
But I would want to consider, look at the data if Mills Park becomes, I think we need to consider, it's been raised, if it could be converted to year-round. Would we need Carpenter to be year-round as well? I mean, this will be messy.
question.
Mills Park is year-round, Carpenter as traditional, and that gives a more proximate to Parkside families who want traditional. And I really raised my hand to say capping creates instability for a lot of families. You've already mentioned the numbers at Mills Park are significant. We recognize there are 70 elementary school kids capped out in Mills Park Elementary. 110, you said that? 110 elementary, 70 out of the middle school.
no,
70 elementary, 190.
190 out of the middle.
Thank you for that correction.
More every day.
More
because of-
and capping, we have to provide transportation. So that creates so many inefficiencies for transportation when we've been struggling to get transportation options for parents from their application schools. So capping is highly inefficient. I would love for us to really make that a high priority to end capping in this part of the county. And I know that went into your calculus. So that was a lot to throw out.
Well, we brought up the capped out students. The elementary students are capped out primarily to what school? Weatherstone?
White Oak.
White Oak. Capped out to White Oak. And the middle school students are capped out to?
West Cary.
West Cary.
To West Cary.
So the 70 was capped out of the elementary.
70 was the number of people in Cameron Park.
Gotcha.
Cameron Pond.
I'm looking at
Cameron Pond.
70 was the number for both the elementary.
Thank you. Got my
Cameron
numbers.
Pond Middle School has about 70 students.
Two different numbers.
Yes.
Right, but the 70 was also the Mills Park Elementary
It
cap
just happened
out
to be the same number,
group.
two different things.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, 70 capped out elementary and 190 capped out of middle school. Got it.
So what is the impact on the capped out students, assuming they're not living in Cameron Pond? If Cameron Pond's move is completed,
So this ideally would open up seats for those students to be called back to their base. So if they're still living in the Mills Park base and they're capped out today, if these moves take hold, we should have seats available to call them back.
For all of them?
And I can't make any promises. I don't know, how many
still
base
matters.
students will be there.
They like staying where they are.
That's right.
Yeah, people
It's
like
hard
to
to
stay
know.
where they are.
This map is your hand raised.
It is. So, I mean, this brought up a question for grandfathering with stability. I mean, we have students who, will be moving, who were at White Oak for kindergarten, got brought back to Mills Park for first grade, and now we're moving them to Carpenter. Do we look at that for grandfathering, or do we say, well, since you haven't been here that long, I mean, then it's, who came first, I guess. So what do we look at for stability for students who, because of capping, I mean, do we look at that as a point of stability?
So our grandfathering rules do not consider that, but that would be something that could come up during a hardship transfer request that the board could consider.
And your policy allows you to create additional grandfathering exceptions. Your policy has a base amount of grandfathering and then says that through your assignment plan, you can add greater grandfathering.
Well, and I'm sure my inbox just filled up with people saying, well, why are you giving priority to people who just moved here? We've been at the school since because we've lived here. So, I mean, it's that balance and finding that balance.
And we hear that a lot.
That seems too confusing. Option 4 seems too confusing.
Can't hear you, Keith. I'm sorry.
Option 4 seems too confusing. I guess because the part about it's not uniform across the district, that would just seem to be more chaos.
I would want to agree with Dr. Martin in terms of the middle school shift from traditional to multi-track and back. It might be that giving this, if we go ahead with this move, giving this community the choice of either going on to Alston Ridge, and they're talking about the kids that are currently at Mills Park, of going to Alston Ridge, which is what we would like for them to do, or remaining at Mills Park and aging out. But the rising sixth graders would go on to Alston Ridge.
And again,
And that would avoid the 1 year, two. Yeah, right. Yeah, rising sixth graders would go on to.
Even if they're attached to a sibling?
Well, attached.
That's a whole thing.
That's a good question.
It is.
That's a clarification to be made. If they're a rising sixth grader with an eighth grader who's staying, well, then do we, after 1 year, make them go to?
I don't know. I don't like. Then we're undoing what we said we didn't want to do to the seventh graders. Once they start sixth grade, moving them.
Very good.
Especially
very good point.
in middle school.
Middle
school's the
school.
hardest for me. It's only 3 years.
And we don't have the K-3 class size at middle school that is a hard, fast,
And I
non-negotiable.
have a middle school thing.
Yes.
So the question is, how would we structure that to not create unexpected
Consequences that were short-term runs. Yeah.
That's the current grandfathering rules. The current grandfathering rules are 5th and 8th graders for 1 year only, and that's something we established last year.
Right.
That is why Mr. Fletcher asked that question. Yeah, that's why
Which
Mr.
would
Fletcher
be,
asked that question.
could be similar, but then it's only sixth grade, and then seventh and eighth, they'd have to go somewhere else.
High school existing to existing, you get to stay.
Right.
So Green Hope Elementary, another school in this area. Again, it requires the calendar applications to maximize the building's capacity. And due to K-3 class size legislation, Highcroft and Weatherstone, which are on the east and west boundaries of the attendance area, do have crowding concerns. So when we looked at this in draft 1 and 2, we proposed that this area here from Weatherstone be assigned to Green Hope, and then this area here from Highcroft. That would coincide with also providing a feeder pattern consistency for the family. So if they would be assigned to Green Hope, it would also be assigned to Davis Drive Middle School.
But the area coming out of Highcroft would be at Green Level High School, which is a different feeder pattern.
That's correct.
For the rest of
Did we figure out how many kids that was?
out of this particular area.
We actually thought, I'm just talking out of turn.
Go ahead.
It is a work day.
But if we move more kids, that would be more students that would be together, right? Did we talk about that?
Meaning if we had assigned more students out of Highcroft into Green Hope, yes, I mean, then you would have a larger cohort. The only concerns we would have initially is, as you look at this particular area.
But we're looking at that one.
Over here. All right. So this is the established neighborhood here that has the majority of the students. This has very minimal students here, and then this is future growth.
For like 2020,
as you look at additional students here, these are all connected, and this is actually in the walk zone for Highcroft Elementary. So that's why we initially didn't look at that as being part of Draft 1 or Draft 2 proposals. But that is certainly something we can look into. My only concerns would be is, it's harder to quickly move students into a school. Like, yes, Green Hope does have some crowding concerns today, but as those calendar applications age out, you'll make room for base students to come in. However, it's not a quick process. Any kindergartner that shows up today, that's 6 years before you're waiting for them to age through. So it's adding more students initially may put additional strain on the school immediately.
But that future growth that we're looking at, I've heard that that's not planning on coming until 2040, and it's mixed use, and so my concern is this doesn't really pull a lot of kids out of Highcroft, and if we're looking at K-3 and the impact of it, I'm worried that we're going to be capping Highcroft fairly soon because of and this isn't going to prevent that.
Yeah.
And it's,
like I said, we'll have more information on a lot of the schools in this area in the next couple months as K-3 committee does their work.
Just off on the left side over here, are there any campuses that we're looking at in this plan that have room for additional mobile capacity?
I'd have to.
I don't
know the answer right now.
I don't think Cedar Fork and Carpenter do, for example, but I don't know about Weatherstone. I don't know about Green Hope. Highcroft doesn't.
Mills Park doesn't.
Mills Park doesn't.
Alston Ridge doesn't.
Hortons Creek doesn't. So that would be another component, and we have to have municipal agreement to do that, and we have to have $100,000 to move an existing unit into place. That's the economics of that decision.
I always tend to forget that part.
Well, it's an
We
important
need
part
to
of
keep
the
in mind,
decision.
that's a big deal.
It is.
And there are major restrictions about when we can move. And too, which is difficult.
We get a Chinook helicopter, just drop them in. We avoid DOT that way.
Do I remember correctly that Green Hope was nearly 50% or more transfer students? And
Correct.
We've been talking for a long time that
Correct.
Green Hope
Very
needs
small
a
base at Green Hope.
So that's another thing we have to consider.
So again, like I
Well,
said,
it's filled with a transfer, with a calendar option, folks.
Yes.
Okay, for a long time, they were coming out of Salem and Turner Creek, and now they're coming from the north.
So like I said, moving them into Green Hope, we would want to assign them to Davis Drive Middle School. Assigning them into Davis Drive Middle School out of West Cary Middle School would provide additional seats at West Cary Middle School for calendar application students for Alston Ridge Middle, as well as provide relief to Mills Park Middle with the students coming out of Highcroft. There's high school areas like Ms. Mahaffey brought up. The students coming out of Highcroft area are assigned to Green Level, so they are the only students who would be assigned to Green Level coming out of Davis Drive at this time. That'll be part of our feeder pattern discussion later on. And there's no high school change proposed for the Weatherstone area.
So how many middle school kids that are you looking at Davis?
Adding into Davis?
From that
I don't think I grabbed that number. It's minimal. It's not a large number at this time.
Meaning under 30, under 20?
Probably around 30-ish.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So Parent feedback we got, Green Hope Elementary is overcrowded. The students coming from Highcroft would not have a cohort moving to Green Level High School with them. And then students moving into Green Hope Elementary and Davis Drive from Weatherstone is an east to west move instead of the west to east like many of the other proposals in our draft. So the options, we can remove this proposal. We can increase the area assigned to Davis Drive Middle School, and I believe, Ms. Cash, that was what you were alluding to, looking at the southern portion of Mills Park, possibly.
Mills Park, that's
as
what I was
areas
talking
to
about.
assign to Davis Drive Middle School.
Bigger cohort.
And then option 3, just keep the recommendation from staff as is. All right. So moving on to Alston Ridge Middle School. District goals when opening this brand new middle school, we look to provide relief to the overcrowded or capped schools in the area, as well as taking the opportunity to provide K-8 calendar alignment for families. So as I had said, all of the elementary students in this area, they will be assigned to all the year-round elementary students will be assigned to a year-round middle school. All the traditional elementary will be assigned to a traditional middle. Alston Ridge Middle School is in yellow, the proposed base attendance area. Providing relief to Mills Park, the students who are in this area here had an Alston Ridge Elementary base, but were assigned to Mills Park Middle School. That was a mismatched calendar, so now we're aligning their calendars. You do have some students coming out of West Cary to go to Alston Ridge Middle School. That's part of the Parkside Elementary base. And then you have a portion of Carpenter Village who had a mismatched calendar, Carpenter Elementary, Davis Drive Middle School. They would be going to Alston Ridge Middle School as well. So basically you'd have Alston Ridge Elementary, Parkside Elementary, Carpenter, and Morrisville would all feed to Alston Ridge Middle School under this plan.
Oh, we're talking about it again. We talk a lot about calendar alignment is really important. I think we have some data that actually may relate to that. I mean, because calendar alignment may be important to some and not to other people. We've heard that, we heard communities over calendars, we heard that a lot. But in the hardship hearings, we get tons of people who are trying to change calendars because of calendar alignment. Do we have a sense of the number that is when we talk about a proposal, the people who don't like whatever the shift is become visible. But we actually probably have some numbers from our transfer requests.
We don't drill down to the specific reasons, but I can tell you this. Alston Ridge Elementary and Carpenter Elementary, which have the mismatched feeder patterns, are the 2 highest elementary schools with regards to the number of transfer requests for a traditional calendar.
And we're talking over 100.
Yes,
each.
over 100 for both. That's correct.
They're also
Yeah.
So can you outline there where this plan achieves K-8 calendar alignment? Are you able just to give us a outline?
So all of the yellow is assigned to a year-round elementary, and then they would be assigned to Alston Ridge Middle School. So all the students in Alston Ridge Elementary in here, okay, these students, they were part of Carpenter Elementary, and they went to East Cary.
Is that Kitts Creek?
Yeah, that's Kitts Creek, and this is Providence Place and Hamlin in the Park up in here. Okay, so they would be assigned to a more proximate school, Alston Ridge Middle School. Again, here's a portion where Carpenter Village that is assigned to Carpenter Elementary, but had Davis Drive Middle School, so that was a mismatch there. This was previously part of East Cary Middle School. This is the Carpenter piece that went to East Cary. This would now go to Alston Ridge Middle School. You've got Morrisville here in this area that would be assigned to Alston Ridge Middle
And
School.
the traditional application school for the area?
Would be West Cary. And we'll talk about that in a couple slides as well. So Alston Ridge Middle School, traditional versus year-round. Again, the same conversation that we had when we looked at Parkside. You've got high growth in the area. We can maximize the number of students that we can seat. Gives us an additional 300 seats. If you look at the current base attendance areas, it would be 111% crowded if assigned to all of those students would be assigned to the school if it was traditional, and then 90% if it was a year-round. And that 90%, when you look at the heat map, you'll see there's a lot of growth that's still coming to this area. So opening it as a year-round will be beneficial. Not to mention, we see a phenomenon with schools that share the same campus that they are in much higher demand. Apex Friendship, Holly Grove, Mills Park. You see many more students doing that because it's one-stop shopping for parents when it comes to bringing your children to one campus. So again, here's that map with the growth. So here's the Alston Ridge Middle School area, and this is the area where we're seeing that higher growth in the next 5 years. This area here is that Mills Park area to the south.
I mean, is this, with this move, with just, you know, the pieces of the northern part of the Mills Park Middle School base, and the growth that's happening in the southern part of the Mills Park Middle base, I don't know if we're going to be giving Mills Park Middle enough relief. And just sharing concerns that I'm hearing of proximity, and a lot of the kids on Fridays will walk home from the school. But is this, if we're talking about crowding and having 190 students capped out, have we done enough? Have we done enough to Mills Park Middle? Or will we be doing this again?
Again, that's a great question because we're opening a school in this particular area, so we're only trying to impact the students in that vicinity. We can certainly look at other areas. I've heard some suggestions already of vacant land, looking at that. But as we start to move forward, we're going to need to look at these particular areas and how can we continue to provide relief to Mills Park Middle School. By changing the grandfathering rules for Mills Park Middle School, you just reduce the time for that impact to take hold. And again, as we had talked about earlier, Davis Drive, in trying to move west to east, we did, in this plan, free up some seats at Davis Drive where we could potentially assign students to Davis Drive, which is proximate in this area. We also did get feedback about trying to use satellite nodes, which we'll talk again later. So we do have some options of how to try to address the upcoming crowding. So again, for the traditional versus year-round, we've just got two options here. If we're going to open as a traditional calendar school, kind of like what we talked about with Parkside, you'll have a huge domino effect of trying to change the base attendance areas to accommodate the school being on a traditional calendar, which would hold about 300 less students than on a year-round. And then if it opens as year-round, that would be moving forward with the current staff recommendation. So the calendar application, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, in addition to West Cary, what are the magnet draw? What is this a magnet draw area for families that really need traditional? And let's say mom or dad works in downtown Raleigh and can get them to a magnet middle school down there. What is the draw?
I don't know all of the schools, but I can tell you the ones I know off the top of my head. You've got Carthage Middle School. If you add Powell, we had talked about possibly adding, for the Parkside people, that we could add Ligon too as that option. You've got, for elementary, who's district-wide, Brentwood, Fuller, Moore Square, Poe, Bug. I mean, there are plenty of schools where we have available traditional calendar seats that they could apply and wouldn't get seated to. This area is high on the priority list for seating students in magnet programs. So we had talked about it. Well, if this school opens on the year-round calendar, the calendar application school choices came into play. We had heard some feedback from families that West Cary was too far. So here are some options that you can consider. Continue to use West Cary Middle School, which would be the current staff recommendation. we could use East Cary Middle School as a calendar application school. It's not as proximate, but we would be able to seat more students at the school. And again, this would be assuming that if we open East Cary Middle School as traditional. Option 3, you could offer, let's say, Mills Park Middle School, but not seat any applications until the crowding at that school is reduced. And I couldn't give you a time frame of when we would have seats available or when we would begin to be able to seat students. So,
And the current recommendation is West Cary.
is West Cary, that's correct. So again, here, the middle school crowding concerns, just looking at the different base attendance areas and where the growth is coming. That leads us to talking about East Cary Middle School. So East Cary Middle School, a large portion of their base is being assigned to Alston Ridge Middle School, the Kitts Creek, Providence Place area. And there's also an area of Morrisville and Carpenter that was assigned to East Cary that's going to Alston Ridge Middle School. So in opening Alston Ridge Middle School, you have a large number of base students no longer assigned to East Cary. East Cary, as you know, as a multi-track year-round school, was already underutilized, relying heavily on transfer applications to fill the school. And so, part of our recommendation was to convert the school to traditional calendar because Reedy Creek Middle School, which is nearby, has an enrollment cap. And then also considering after the Alston Ridge Middle School opening, the 3 schools that would be feeding to East Cary Middle School are Adams, which is on the year-round calendar, and then Cary Elementary and Dillard Drive Elementary, which are both on traditional calendar. So you've got some mismatched calendar alignments there. So what we looked at is the areas that are most proximate to East Cary Middle School, and I'll show you on a map, they're assigned to Reedy Creek Middle School. Many of the students pass East Cary Middle School to get to Reedy Creek. There are areas that are proposed to East Cary Middle School from Davis Drive that were included to help meet the operational efficiency and student achievement pillars. Because as you look at this particular area, so East Cary used to include Adams here, which is in this darker color. It had a section over here, okay, that was part of the Carpenter, and then a section out of the screen here that was the Kitts Creek and Providence Place area. Those were the base attendance areas for East Cary when it was proposed as a year-round middle school. Now with all of these in the yellow going to Alston Ridge Middle School, we need to look around this area proximate to the school to fill East Cary. And Reedy Creek being capped, and this being the Reedy Creek base attendance area, it seemed like a logical area to add. And since we were trying to keep K-8 calendar alignment, something had to give here. You either took a couple different Briarcliff, Farmington Woods, you've got Cary Elementary. We could talk about possibly changing them to a year-round calendar and impacting many more students, or just changing East Cary to a traditional calendar. And so we took the one that would impact less students. So we proposed to change East Cary to traditional. Then taking all of these students in this particular area, and then again going all the way out here to the Davis Drive area to try to have enough students to make it balanced with the other schools in the area and to fill it on the traditional calendar. Because the long-term concerns we have about the school is East Cary will not have many schools applying to it for a traditional calendar. Just this area, the Adams base, will be able to apply to it as a traditional calendar. Reedy Creek is a magnet school. They can take.
What will the Adams base be assigned to as a middle school?
They would be assigned to Lufkin.
Be assigned to Lufkin.
So is that on that map, Lufkin anywhere?
Lufkin is down here. It's just outside of the map.
Okay.
Right off Highway 1.
Down Highway.
Okay, so Adams is, and where's Adams?
Adams is it's right here.
Right about there, and so it's going to go, that's a big change, right?
In order to provide K-8 alignment, that would be a further, East Cary is very proximate.
So Lufkin is quite a ways from Adams compared to East Cary, which is right there.
That's correct. But if you remember...
I'm not trying to make an argument, I'm just trying to get the facts.
But if you remember earlier in the process, we wanted to propose Adams to convert to traditional calendar as well as East Cary. That would have given them approximate middle school, and they would have both
And where
in
are the
same
choices for
calendar.
year-round for these kids?
For
If
these
they
kids?
live right around East Cary and they live right around Adams?
So depending on where you go, the Adams students would get to go to Lufkin. That would be their choice. Some of these
Where
students
would your
here-
elementary choice be if you had made it traditional? What if people live there and want to go year-round?
for these students here, for elementary or middle school?
She's saying for Adams,
Both.
right?
Give me both.
For Adams.
Say you're an elementary and a middle school parent and you live in all that area around East Cary and Adams. Where are your options for year-round education?
Okay, so these students here in this area are either going to be applying to Salem or Adams.
Okay.
But
For
what's the other?
elementary. For middle school, they would apply to either Salem or Lufkin.
But where's Laurel Park? I think
Laurel
Roxy,
Park is over
I'm not sure.
this
You're
area
asking
right
if
here.
Adams was traditional, what would be the year-round elementary option?
Oh, if Adams was traditional, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
We're just trying to see
Okay.
that.
So if Adams was traditional, yes, you'd be looking at Laurel Park or Salem, which are the blue here and then the greenish yellow here.
So that's quite a ways, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so there wouldn't be a lot, if Adams was not year-round, there wouldn't be a lot of close options for year-round. And when we make East Cary traditional, we don't have a lot of close options for year-round for middle school.
Yeah. But just
Okay, I just wanna
to give you a little history, though, Adams and East Cary are currently multi-track year-round.
Right, I get
And they rely on a large number of application students to fill the school, and we just don't seem to get enough to fill them at the multi-track year-round.
I understand your purpose of changing it. I'm just trying to see what I can do for people who really want multi-track
Got it.
and want to go where they get to go.
And there are quite a few.
Yeah.
So here's my concern, Glenn, is that if I can find the right data point here. We have a code in the assignment that's a P code, which means a student has opted for a different calendar. So you shared with me that in 2018, there were in June of 2018, which is behind us, there were 116 students in the multi-track program that were in the base for, or in the draw area for East Cary. But only 59 of those wound up going to East Cary. So there's more than a 50% loss of families who had been satisfied with the multi-track program who chose not to go on to middle school. And the community would raise their hand and say, that's a marketing issue. That's not a calendar issue. That's not anything other than the middle school not reaching out to the elementary school and saying, come, let us show you what's waiting for you in our middle school. The companion information is that 114 kids from Reedy Creek had voluntarily left Reedy Creek to go to East Cary. This plan moves 50 of them back, but leaves 64. I guess at East Cary, unless, I guess they're going to be at East Cary regardless of what the calendar is. Then there are 111 from West Cary who had chosen to go to East Cary. So the West Cary ones won't be in this plan. They'll have to go home to West Cary. So my concern is that these numbers concern me that they're not properly reflected in the anticipated resulting enrollments at these various schools. And that we've got 326 folks who have chosen to go to multi-track school, and we are basically saying we appreciate the fact that you came, but we're not going to provide that option any longer.
How many?
So I'm concerned. 326
Across,
I haven't heard that
are
number.
P
is that
students.
across all 3 grade levels?
Yeah, 326 are P students.
I actually hadn't heard that number.
He's students at East
At East Cary, meaning the calendar option students who chose to go to East Cary. They were not base assigned. They chose to go there. And the challenge for this school forever has been an extremely small base. And it is something to be done. I think we may be overdoing it. So I'm concerned about where these kids wind up going. We've heard more from folks who are base assigned to Reedy Creek who are being asked to move to East Cary as a traditional calendar and lose their magnet school. And we've also heard from the Davis people as well. There are only 5 kids from Davis who have volunteered to go to East Cary and came as a calendar option student. There are, I don't know, 70 or 90 or so in the plan coming from Davis as in the current plan. No, 73 currently in 6th through 8th grade. So I think I'm hearing in Ms. Cash's question the question of, do we really need to abandon the year-round program at this location? I am aware that they are having to draw down over $250,000 additional teaching resources in order to provide a rigorous program across all 4 tracks. So that is an additional operational expense that we're trying to eliminate. The other things that the community has pointed out is the anticipated growth of the community right behind Adams Elementary, which is several years out.
And it's mixed use, so it's not going to generate a lot of revenue.
Well, there's a significant number of residential use in that mixed use. It's a North Hills type concept, which has a lot of residential in it.
But in our data, it doesn't produce a lot of students. North Hills doesn't produce a lot. We should point out as our issues what our data says versus what
that raises another question: is that the data to which you refer is not data that's available to the board.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know what's going to happen to the 111 kids from West Cary. They're going to go home to West Cary, and are they in your numbers for West Cary?
Yes.
Okay.
One of my additional concerns is we've got, right now, East Cary, Salem, and Lufkin are all multi-track year-round, and none of them are at capacity. We've got too much, year-round multi-track.
Salem's getting close.
Okay.
Salem's getting close to capacity, but it's true. And it's been a problem. But the challenge is whether we allow the year-round program to wither or we do what's necessary to build it. And I would much rather do what's necessary to build it than allow it to die.
So I don't think anybody's saying allow it to die. The question, though, is what is the right balance? Because
I agree.
The year-round has worked when it is by choice. It rarely works when it is by decree. And trying to keep all tracks on a multi-track year-round to have equitable offerings is really tough.
It's a challenge, and that's
been a real challenge.
That's where the extra teaching positions were required to do that.
And keeping the school on year-round calendar would not provide relief to Reedy Creek, which is capped. That's just it.
All right, since you brought back up Reedy Creek. Reedy Creek was capped in December of 17 with a cap number of 1,015. Today's capacity number is in the 800s. In your most recent revised capacity that recognized classrooms needed for magnet program. It was a magnet school when the cap was set at 1015. So are we going to let 1015 kids into that building, which means the opportunity for the students that are there to grandfather until they move out, until they age out? I'm having some conflict between what we say the capacity is today and what in just 2 years ago or a year ago we said was the cap number, which is 1015. So
the cap number is
a number beyond which we don't want to go.
Correct.
I understand that. At the same time, why is it capped if we're not going to fill it to that number? And you can answer that at some point.
I think the other question that we heard in Cary was for the kids who have been in the magnet program since it started in 2017 that we're moving out. I think we have to look at grandfathering as well for those kids because
Or magnetizing or something. That means transferring.
yeah.
But we got a situation where the base assigned families embraced a new program. And 1 year later, the plan says we're going to move the 7th and 8th graders out.
That was a really clear message that day.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge. So
my real question is, we have these public hearings that are wonderful where we hear so much, but we only have student assignment at the table that night and the board. I'm wondering, and I would really like, why is magnet, transportation, other departments not represented at the student assignment hearings? Because for some reason that night we hear so much about what magnet programs aren't working, what transportation issues we have, and then it all filters into Glenn Carrozza, who's trying to fix it with student assignment. We have this really good opportunity to have everybody at the table at student assignment hearings with our public. I would like to have a lot more people represented at those hearings.
Well, I think as an example of what was successful this year was at the green level information session, we had our director of high school programs and the area superintendent, who I think did a fabulous job, to Ms. Cash's point, filling in some of the blank spaces of what student assignment questions came up. By Mr. Cook was able to say, here's what high school programs will have at green level, and Dr. Savage was able to talk about, when I opened a high school, this is what I did, and this is what I would expect as the area superintendent here. So that, I think, is what Ms. Cash is talking about, fleshing out.
The hearings are like the best opportunity at student assignment. We have the most input we ever get, and I would like to have the magnet people there, the program people there, the transportation people there, and student assignment, because certainly Glenn Carrozza can fix a lot, but he certainly can't fix it all. And so that would be my wish.
That's a great suggestion. Because it's the swing space for Apex High, it was nice that the kids actually got to see the school that they're proposed to attend. So that's just
that was a good evening.
That was very thanks to the custodian and the assistant principal and our ability to use swing space.
This gets back to our fundamental discussion where we often say assignment can't do it all.
Right.
And then when we get to this point, we dump it all on assignment's shoulders and say do it all.
We do.
And we've even talked about that, right? The East Cary issue, can we not change the start time? Because the start time seems to be a significant issue.
It is.
That strikes me as a relatively small thing. Why can't we do that at the same time as we're talking about assignment?
Wherever we have
decisions, but
campuses like Westlake, and I guess the Friendship campuses, but this is a place where we've got an elementary that starts at the latest time and a middle school that starts at the earliest time, which means families are, if they're going to provide their own transportation, they're on the road all day. And consolidating those bell schedules, I don't know why the kids couldn't ride the same bus. We do that in some places.
Right.
Westlake and Westlake, the middle school and elementary ride the same bus because they've got a 10-minute separation in their bell schedule.
I said I wasn't going to sound like a broken record today, but to Ms. Cash's point, we can't just talk about these issues when it's assignment.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, and of course staff's tired of me saying that, but it's not working for us to just talk about this at assignment. It's literally a year-long conversation because we're trying to balance what we hear from parents, and more importantly, we're trying to balance the health and wellness of all of our programming.
Right.
And we are doing it on the back of assignment, which inevitably is not going to work. It hasn't.
And we're not.
We just keep doing the same thing. It's not working.
We're not talking about bell schedules until April.
And all of those for families are the same thing, right? Where I go to school, it's not just our 4 pillars of how I decide as a parent. Bell schedule matters, right? The distance between 2 schools if I have multiple children. Parents have to look at this from a holistic point of view for their life. And I think we have to do that too as a board to actually maximize our magnet programming, because we can't say, hey, look at this magnet school, you should go here now in the midst of, because we're moving you, not because we're saying, hey, our magnet program's great, here are some options on that we can create pathways, because you understand the greatness of our magnets. And the same thing would be true for year-round.
We got a lot of good information at Cary High that night. We got a lot of information about what programs were working, what transportation issues were working, and I was like, I kept looking at Glenn like, will you tell them about that? Are you going to tell them about that?
Well, and I think, we do have the regional mini magnet fairs that are coming in different areas. There's going to be one
right now,
right? Tomorrow at 9:30 at Mills Park Elementary School. But when you're a family that's impacted by assignment,
you can't hear that.
You don't want to.
It's all the noises. I'm not listening to that now. I mean, that's just true as a parent. We're not. It's just that.
Well, I just wanted to add to your comment, which I think is right on point and very well taken, and maybe add some historical perspective to that we try to fix student achievement years ago by using student assignment. And it worked for a while, worked well, to the point that somebody wrote a book on why there are no bad schools in Wake County. And then as we continue to grow, it broke the system. And we're now trying to address the growth part, as you said, sort of completely on the back of student assignment. And if we're not careful, it's going to break the system.
Yes.
Some might already argue that the system's already broken.
And guess what? When we did that, we didn't have all the options that we do now. To your point.
So, yeah, it's a conversation.
Yeah, it is. It's a big one, and I know it feels like a bear. And for me, like, I try to bring it up twice a year before we get to assignment, and then when we get to assignment. And I mean, just 4 years on this board, we've gone from 42 people moved to Wake County to 67 people moved to Wake County. I'm going to guess that the next 2 years out here, we are going to still be talking about this magnitude of growth. This can't be the time we have this conversation. It's not fair to us as board members who are trying to cram all this in our head, make all kinds of charts. I mean, I'm emailing myself stuff so I can remember because I don't have the ability to remember myself. So I email myself documents. I've been sitting here sending myself emails. But I think that's the hard part about this, and I get it for staff that this is difficult, and I think I've said this to you, Glenn. But I think we have to be transparent to parents that we get it. This is hard. It's hard for us. And there's not one mechanism or one tool that works across the entire district. So.
And I think, and Ms. Cash's point is well taken. I don't know that having more staff come to the hearings helps, but your point is well taken is that the fix is one that's multidimensional, multifaceted, and comprehensive. That includes curriculum focus and everybody else. I mean, I think even I'm sitting here looking at Mr. Agee's face, and you talked about facilities and some of the building pieces. And while I don't agree with all your conversation and remarks at some of the meetings at the beginning of our public meetings, I do hear that facilities is a part of that piece. And so it's one that it's going to take a...
That's the only answer to this question. Is seats. That's the only answer.
I would say education is a big part of it as well, because I mean, I'll say this is the most recent transplant at this table. Coming from an area, I listened to David Ellis speak at the state of the county and at Apex and at Holly Springs, and it's, people are moving from New York, New Jersey, California, our biggest states that feed into it, and that's where you have small municipal districts. And so to move to a countywide system is a very different. You get the mentality that school's going to be the same because it's, when I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, it was the same idea. And then coming to the county, your first thing is you walk in and, oh, the school's kept, or, oh, you're getting reassigned. There needs to be an education piece
that you have
of
a
what...
year-round school.
Right, or the school's year-round. What do you mean? I just moved and it's August, and school started? And so how do we communicate to families as they're moving in what it means to be a part of a countywide school system? Because there are a lot of benefits. We have magnets. We have calendar application programs. We have, all of these pros. But when you walk in and the first thing is, this is very different from where I grew up, it's a, I'm not sure I like it. And then learning, we can't do impact fees and all that is
That's true.
another piece.
What does it mean?
And I think that part has to be, the foundation has to be the reason to have a unified countywide school system, the reason for the merger in the 70s, the reason why other cities like Raleigh and Wake County do not have successful public school systems is because of fragmentation and resegregation. And all the high taxes are not supporting all kids. They're higher taxes and they're getting less for it, in my opinion, in other cities. So we have to tell that story. Because it's a compelling story of success since the 70s, and we're at a critical point and juncture that the community needs to recognize those things.
And I think we have to say that. We are at a critical juncture, and we will be back to pre-merger conditions of our public school if we don't. I mean, it's hard because nobody ever wants to say, what's wrong. Well, the community's already told us what's wrong, right? I mean, so we can't ignore that we are at a critical point. And again, to the point, there are far more choices than there were 18 years ago.
And they're not doing the innovation.
That's right.
The innovation in Wake County is occurring in the Wake County public school system. We have a lot of choices, whether it's early college or magnets or academies within our comprehensive high schools, the dynamic plans we have for the 4 Cs. I mean, the innovation is happening in our schools, and we need to talk about it every day. We have our hashtag, what starts here changes everything, and we need to just amplify all that.
We do.
And we need our parents to help us do that.
Yep. Above the noise.
All right, so here's just some of the feedback that was associated with the East Cary Middle School proposal. Davis Drive Middle School families, they prefer to remain at the more proximate school. They also offered a large number of other suggestions on how to accommodate East Cary Middle School's needs. We'll get into some of those as well, but just, they talked about satellite areas, looking at different ways to satellite areas with existing neighborhoods, satellite areas with vacant land, and then also looking at other borders or different ways to assign students in a particular area. Reedy Creek Middle School families, they would like to remain at Reedy Creek, as most students do, but they have also proposed revising the grandfathering rules, which again we'll discuss a little bit later. They did make some comments so that they felt, as did Davis Drive, they felt that too many students were being reassigned out of the existing school. And then Adams Elementary families, they would like a more approximate year-round middle school. They also prefer to keep East Cary Middle School as year-round as well. Yes.
So where's the Twin Lakes neighborhood that would like to keep Alston Ridge as are we at that stage yet?
Well, that's in Cedar Fork, Twin Lakes. So they would like closer rather than Pleasant Grove? Yeah, that's part of that Pleasant Grove Powell conversation.
Did I miss that?
Well, no. I mean, when we talked about what the options would be, we didn't talk specifically about Twin Lakes, but it was just about what the feedback we were getting from people in that area, that Powell was too far, as was Pleasant Grove. But the other option there, if I can just bring it up again, is we have local traditional calendar schools, but we just don't have seats. So we could assign that as an application area, we just wouldn't be able to seat students for quite some time. That also goes with the middle school.
I think I was thinking middle school for some reason.
So West Cary Middle School, when we talked about the West Cary application school.
So when Twin Lakes says Alston Ridge, they're talking elementary versus the Pleasant Grove?
I believe they're talking about middle school.
That's what I thought.
They want to have West Cary, a school closer than West Cary as a traditional calendar application school, or the students that are assigned to maybe the Cedar Fork area want to have Alston Ridge as a year-round application school instead of Salem or something like that. And we're not offering brand new schools as calendar application schools because we're waiting for the growth to settle in first. Kind of like where we had Apex Friendship Middle School. We did not want to seat many applicants at that school, and that upset parents. So we're trying to provide options where we can seat students.
So why would, if people are going to be forced into a traditional calendar that are in a year-round calendar, because whatever option they have is too far away, we wouldn't try to give them a closer year-round calendar just because we're waiting for growth?
Well, it depends on where we have availability. I mean, we're looking at, in Western Wake, we don't have too many families that are being forced into traditional. That's the preferred calendar in that area. So if they're asking for year-round, we will be able to.
I think the data around the schools and the percentage of base attending base comes here again, because in Western Wake, certainly for traditional and even for some of the year-rounds, the base attending base is higher in the Western than as you move east.
I would love to have that data again, base attending base.
We got it last year.
Is there a way for me to know the number of year-round kids that are going to be forced to go to Pleasant Grove as a calendar option versus taking Alston Ridge as a calendar option?
As a calendar match.
Wait to see, don't have to apply for it.
What do you guys call it now? Calendar magnet?
Pleasant Grove is traditional.
Yeah, that's traditional. That's what Bill was fixing. Yeah,
What is another? Was there another year-round that?
Alston Ridge.
Okay, let me relook at this.
Okay.
So Glenn, it's
My time's out.
5:15. No, well, but we will see you in the big room. I'm just stopping here because I think it's a solid stopping point because the next
starts to get into more.
Yeah. So that'll give us roughly a 15-minute switch, but we'll amend the agenda and add you as an informational.
Is that after hearing? After the public hearing?
Public comment, you mean? Sorry. It took me a minute. I was like,
Public comment, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can put it before that.
Before that.
Sorry, it took me a minute to register what you were saying.
I know, I was
like, well, today we have recognition, and then we have.
It would be good to have an after public comment so we could.
I don't.
You know, you're right. We could do it either way. I'll catch up.
Okay, so we're going to take a 15-minute break before we go into the we go back and forth with the information that you're going to add. Melissa and I we can always.